Hey guys, today I wanted to show you quickly how to set up a default template in Ableton Live. A default template is nothing more than a collection of your favorite instruments, effects and settings that allow you to quickly jump into Ableton and start making music. Many people have different ways of creating their templates depending on genre and workflow, so I'm just going to show you one of the templates that I use, and you can hopefully get a few tips and tricks from this to make your own custom template. The first thing that I do when I open Ableton is I adjust the BPM. I tend to work around 128, so I'll set the BPM to 128 BPM. Now over here on the right you'll see a group called Helpers. If we drop this down, I have two tracks. One is reference, one is sidechain. For the reference track, this is set up so you can just drag and drop a mastered tune into your project, so you can reference it by turning it off and on as you work through your track, just to gauge how the sounds compare to a fully mastered track, and also volume. Now the one thing to note with reference tracks is that in your output type it needs to be external out. This just means that it will bypass your master chain, so you can hear the tune without it running through any of the plugins that you may have in your master chain. The next track down is sidechain. I'm not going to use this video to explain to you what sidechaining actually is if you don't already understand, but if you are fully aware of what sidechaining is, you will see that I have dropped an instance of operator in here and put a 1-bar loop in. I've also turned the channel off, as you don't need to actually hear the sidechain channel, you just need to use it to pump your sound. The next thing I've got is a 909 drum kit. Now this has just been set by default, but what I have actually done, if we just click over to clip view, is each instrument I have added an EQ onto. The other thing I have also done with these is added some return chains. So if you can't see them by default, down here bottom left you'll see the R button for return. Click on that and you will see that I've added a reverb, and I have also added a drum bus. So if I quickly use my kick as an example for both, first of all the drum bus, and now the reverb. And this just allows you to further adjust the individual instruments in the drum kit. At the end of the actual drum kit's chain, I also have a glue compressor that will glue all the sounds together. So next down I have my bassline, and this is simply an instance of wavetable. I've done a couple of presets like turning both oscillators on, I've transposed it down 10, and I've also added voices in, classic and 5 voices. Again, I've added an EQ and a compressor. I don't always use a compressor, but if you're going to sidechain, this is a good way of doing it, and you can always delete it out if you don't need it. The last thing in my bassline is a utility, and I've set that bass mono, so anything below 120 Hz will be mono and not stereo. Now if we go down to my next group that I've called Synths, they're both exactly the same, but one has an instance of operator and one has an instance of analog. And I've just quickly added in a single note into both just to get started. So these can be used for both leads or pads. You can just duplicate them and create new tracks. My last group is samples. Again, they are pretty much similar setup with a compressor and an EQ8 on, but this first one is a sample for audio, so this is where you might want to drag on an audio file and play around with it. And the second one is for a MIDI, so I've just added an instance of Simpler, so you can add on your audio sample into Simpler and then adjust how you like. And as you can see, I've also added a note into the Simpler, ready for you to use. Now the last thing of note is the master channel. I haven't done much here, but I've added a utility in so I can check mono compatibility as I work through my tune. And I've added a limiter so I can bring the volume up just as I'm producing. At the end of the project, I'd go through the whole mastering process, which would not require this limiter. But just as you're working, you might need to push the gain up to match the reference track, or just be a little bit louder. So once you've set your default template up the way you would like, you go up to Options, Preferences, and then the File Folder tab, and you can see here, Save Current Set as Default. So I'll press Save, and what that means now is every time you open Ableton, this template will load. So we'll go File, New Live Set, and here you can see everything has been loaded. So I hope that's given you a better understanding what a default template is, and perhaps a few tips and tricks. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Otherwise, we'll chat again soon.